The sound of her laughter came from the hallway, sharp, breathy, flirtatious. I wasn't supposed to hear it. She didn't know I was home early. From where I stood in the laundry room, behind the half-closed door, I saw her reflection in the hallway mirror. She leaned into her phone with a grin I hadn't seen in months. The kind of grin someone saves for a first date, not for the man they've been married to for nearly a decade. "Don't wait up," she whispered into the speaker. "He's always in bed by 9 anyway." There was a pause, then another soft laugh. "Yeah, I'm wearing it." My throat tightened, but my feet stayed frozen to the tile. I didn't make a sound. I listened to the clink of her perfume bottle being set down on the entryway table, followed by the metallic zip of her purse. Then came the heels. Sharp. Confident. Too confident. She swung the front door open and added with a smirk, "He won't even ask." And she was right. I didn't ask. I stood there behind the door, watching the last second of her reflection vanish as the door clicked shut. That was my wife, Eleanor. And she was going on a date, bold enough not to lie, certain enough that I'd do nothing. And I didn't. Not that night. I walked upstairs with the same quiet, defeated steps I used when my father used to say, "It's not worth the fight, son." Maybe I believed that. Maybe I used it as an excuse. But in our bedroom, something felt different. She hadn't just left for someone else, she'd left me in pieces on purpose. As if it brought her joy. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the floral arrangement she'd moved to my nightstand that morning. She told me it was from a friend at work. But tucked under one of the petals was a small card I hadn't noticed. 2 words. No name. Tonight. Finally. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and started a new document. I didn't know what I was writing. A letter? A confession? A timeline? I think I just needed to see it. Because somehow, writing it down made it real. And as I typed, I remembered things I had brushed aside for months. The sudden gym membership, the silence at dinner, the dead phone battery during her weekend trips, the new bras I'd never seen on her. All of it was there. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. But now, she'd said it out loud. "I'm going on a date." And I hadn't said a word back. But tomorrow, I would. To be continued. I don't know how long I sat there in front of that blank document. Hours, probably. The screen dimmed, then darkened, then lit back up with my own reflection staring back at me. I looked like someone who had forgotten how to be human. The kind of guy people walk past at gas stations and avoid eye contact with. The kind of man whose wife no longer bothers to lie to. I hadn't written a single word. By the time I heard her car pull into the driveway, the sky had started to lighten. I hadn't even noticed the night go by. She came in quietly, as if she didn't want to wake a version of me that no longer existed. Her shoes came off by the door. Her jacket dropped onto the floor. She never did that. Then I heard her move upstairs, not even pausing at our bedroom. She went straight into the guest bathroom. I waited. Not to ambush her. Not to scream, cry, or beg. I just wanted to see her. I wanted to look into her face and find even the smallest flicker of shame, or doubt, or guilt. But when she emerged, drying her hair with a towel, she didn't even flinch when she saw me standing at the top of the stairs. She met my gaze like I was a nosy neighbor she barely tolerated. "You're up early," she said. Her voice was smooth, controlled, still sick. I nodded, and she walked past me like I was a coat rack. That day, I started keeping notes. Not for confrontation. For clarity. Thursday. Lavender perfume. Out from 8:14 p.m. to 5:51 a.m. Returned in denim jacket, light makeup, subtle scent of something cologne-based. Avoided bedroom. Avoided eye contact. Zero acknowledgement of prior night's comment. It sounds crazy now, but it helped. It gave structure to the chaos. And soon, I had a whole week logged in my journal. Patterns emerged. Certain days she came home late. Certain nights she'd sleep in the guest room, claiming I was snoring too loudly. A few times she left the house in workout clothes and came back with freshly blow-dried hair. That's when I made a mistake. I decided to check the laundry basket. There, tucked beneath her running shorts, I found a receipt from a restaurant 3 towns over. A wine bar. 2 entrees. 2 glasses of Merlot. 1 slice of tiramisu. The receipt had a name written on the top in cursive, Clint. Not a server name. Not a company name. Just Clint. The name meant nothing to me. But to her? Well, that became clear 2 days later when she left her tablet on the couch, unlocked and glowing. She must have been distracted. Maybe she thought I wouldn't care. Maybe she wanted me to see. There, in a folder titled Work Docs, was a PDF named Q3 Breakout Notes. But when I opened it, it wasn't notes. It was a scanned photo of her in a hotel room mirror, wearing lingerie I'd never seen. Her smile wasn't shy. It was proud, like she wanted someone to frame it. I didn't open the next file. I didn't need to. That night, she sat across from me at dinner and complained about the chicken being too dry. She scrolled through her phone, told me she was tired, then left to get some air. I stayed at the table, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt like a guest in my own life. This wasn't a crack in the foundation. This was a demolition. Silent, intentional, precise. But still, I said nothing. Because some part of me, the pathetic, clinging part, believed she might still turn around and say, it was just a mistake. But what I didn't know then was that I hadn't even seen the worst yet. That came the following Thursday, the night she left her second phone in the glove box. It was supposed to be a quick run to the store. That's all. She tossed me the keys because she was in the middle of curling her hair, her phone wedged under her chin as she told someone on speaker, No, I'll leave after I finish the eyeliner. He's just running to get wine. I didn't even ask who she was talking to. I didn't care about the wine. I took the keys, walked to her car, and for the first time in years, I sat in her seat and really looked around. There was something off about the air in her car, like the scent of unfamiliar cologne that had been hidden beneath the layer of her lavender spray. That scent again. Always lavender. Always hiding something behind it. I adjusted the rearview mirror, and for a second, I saw myself pale, worn out, more ghost than man. I looked down at the cup holder. Lip balm. A receipt from a gas station 30 miles out of town. A gold bobby pin that shimmered like it didn't belong to her. Eleanor had dark hair. This was blonde. I opened the glove box, just because. No real reason. That's when I saw it. A second phone. Not even trying to hide it. Just there. Face down. Slight scratch on the screen protector. I picked it up with shaking hands and pressed the power button. Locked. Of course. But still powered on. And I knew, this wasn't a backup. Eleanor had never once mentioned another line. And it had a sticker on the back. A little red heart. She hated stickers. Said they looked juvenile. My hands were so cold I could barely grip the steering wheel when I backed out of the driveway. I didn't go to the store. I drove to the gas station instead, sat in a corner of the lot, and just stared at the phone in my palm. I didn't know whether I was more scared of what was inside or of what it said about me that I hadn't noticed it sooner. I tried guessing the passcode. Our anniversary? Nope. Her birthday? No. Her ex's birthday. I hated that I even thought of it. Also no. I gave up after 3 tries. I didn't want to lock it completely. I wasn't trying to be a spy. I just needed a sliver of truth. I went home. I didn't say anything. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Didn't even tell her I saw it. But from that moment, I began watching her differently. Closely. That night, she kissed me on the forehead, gently, absently, like someone saying goodbye to a patient they don't expect to wake up. I noticed she hummed while brushing her teeth. She never used to do that. Her phone, the main one, stayed plugged in and untouched all night, even though she used to scroll before bed. Her smile was hollow, as if she had used all her real emotions somewhere else hours earlier. And I lay there thinking about the other phone, about how many nights it had vibrated softly in that glove box while she drove away from me. The next morning, I waited until she left for work, then called in sick. I opened her laptop, found her synced Google account, and clicked Find My Device. 2 devices. 2 locations. One, at her office downtown. The other? A hotel near the interstate. It was 10:32 a.m. on a Tuesday, and my wife's other phone was spending the morning in a place we'd never stayed together. I didn't call her. I didn't scream. I sat on the living room floor and stared at the blinking dot on the screen. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was being erased, not suddenly, but slowly, cleanly, and with such casual cruelty that it almost looked like love from the outside. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, but because something inside me had shifted. Not broken. Not yet. But bent in a way that could never fully go back. The next day, I made a decision. I was going to visit the hotel. Not to catch her. Not to confront her. But to see what kind of man I was being replaced by. It was cloudy the morning I drove to the hotel. The kind of weather where the sky feels too low, like it's pressing down on you, daring you to change course. I didn't. I parked across the street, not in the lot. I didn't want the front desk to know I was there. I wasn't sure what I was doing yet, or who I'd become once I walked through those glass doors. But I knew I needed to see it. Needed to stand in the same air she'd been breathing while I sat at home pretending we were still okay. The building itself was newer, generic, clean stucco exterior, 2 floors, faux modern lobby. Not the type of place you'd go for a family vacation. But it was quiet, private, cold. I watched people come and go for 20 minutes. Businessmen, couples. One man in his 20s with flowers tucked under his arm and that nervous energy of someone sneaking away from a promise. And then in her car, Eleanor. She parked like she always did, one-handed on the wheel, checking her lipstick in the mirror even after turning off the engine. She didn't see me. She never looked my way. She got out, phone in hand, not her main one, of course. The other. The one with the red heart sticker. She was wearing sneakers, jeans, and a navy hoodie she stole from me 3 years ago during a camping trip. She used to say it was her favorite thing I owned. Now it looked like a disguise. I held my breath and ducked slightly as she walked past. She didn't look around. She didn't hesitate. Straight to the entrance. Through the doors. Gone. I waited 2 minutes. Then got out of my car. I didn't plan to follow her, not really. But my feet didn't care what my head was trying to say. I walked in. Lobby was empty. A fake smile from the woman at the desk. I ignored it. Elevator. 2 floors. 2nd floor. Long hallway. Beige carpet. Dim lights. Then I saw her. Not Eleanor, him. A man. Late 30s. Gray sweatshirt. Athletic build. He stood outside room 214, holding a key card. He looked down at his phone, smiled to himself, and then knocked lightly on the door instead of opening it. I froze mid-step. The door opened. Eleanor stood there, smiling. That smile. She stepped aside, and he kissed her on the cheek as he walked in. No hesitation. No fear. As if this was their routine. She closed the door behind them, and I stood in the hallway, holding nothing, feeling nothing, like I wasn't even there. I don't know how long I stayed there, but I didn't knock. I didn't scream or bang or crash through the door like some movie. I just stared at the number 214 and etched it into my memory. Then I turned around and walked out. Outside, I sat in my car with the windows up, the heat off. I felt colder than I ever had before. Not angry, not devastated, just reduced. Reduced to a man who had just watched his wife greet another man with joy. Reduced to someone who had, somehow, made this possible by not being enough. And that night, back home, I made her dinner. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed things to feel normal, even if I was the only one playing along. She came home late, hair slightly damp, smile lazy. She said, "Smells good," kissed me on the temple, and poured herself a glass of wine. She didn't ask where I'd been. She didn't notice the tremble in my hand when I passed her the bread. But something changed after that night. Not in her. In me. I began to see her differently. Not as the woman who broke me, but as the woman who had been rehearsing this betrayal for so long that she forgot I was still watching. And I had just started recording. She always locked her phone. Always. The new one with the red heart sticker had a passcode. Her laptop? Password protected. Even her diary app had facial recognition. But the cloud? The cloud she never touched. That's where I found everything. It started with a pop-up. She forgot to sign out of her Apple ID on the tablet. I didn't go looking for anything, not that time. I was using the browser to check a tracking number for something I'd ordered her for our anniversary. A necklace. Personalized. God, I feel stupid even typing that now. But there it was, her iCloud dashboard. Wide open. She must have assumed I wouldn't notice the drop-down icon in the corner. She probably thought I was too naive. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Either way, the doors to her digital world swung wide open. And I walked in. First, the photos. Not the kind you'd think. No selfies. No inappropriate poses. Just moments. Candid shots of hotel room beds, wine glasses with lipstick stains, notes scribbled on napkins. A blurry picture of the same man from room 214, Clint, I assumed. He was asleep. Shirtless. His hand resting on her waist. Her hair across the pillow like it belonged there. There were albums. One labeled Mon/Wednesday. Another, Out West. A third simply titled with a heart emoji. Inside were screenshots of conversations, maps, saved places, and even playlists. One was named, He Doesn't Know. The icon beside it was a clown. That one hurt. Then there were the notes. Dates. Descriptions. One-liners. Clint prefers blue lingerie, bring back up. Thursdays equals safe. He, me, never asks. Excuse. Girls' night. Used 4x. Mix it up. And at the bottom of the list, dated only 2 weeks ago. Eventually, I'll tell him. Just need the right moment. Or maybe I won't. That sentence, so casual, so dismissive, was the first thing to make my stomach turn in hours. Until then, I'd felt numb. Watching her live a parallel life had dulled my nerves. But that woke something up in me. I realized that I'd stopped being her husband long before she stopped wearing her ring. It didn't end there. The cloud also had synced voice memos. I didn't even know she used them. Most were just a few seconds long. Some were reminders: pick up red wine, confirm appointment, don't forget Clint's gift. But one was different. 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Recorded at night. Judging by the ambient sound, it was taken in a car. She was talking to herself. And I listened to the whole thing. She talked about me, said I was predictable, that I never fought. That being with me was like living in a museum, quiet, fragile, and filled with things no one really looks at anymore. She laughed. Then she got serious. She said she didn't know why she hadn't left yet, that she stayed because it was easier, because she liked having a safe house to recharge before doing what actually made her feel alive. That phrase, safe house, was when I realized what I really was to her. A fallback. A placeholder. A man-shaped coat rack with a debit card and a soft voice. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I backed up everything. Quietly. Carefully. I screen-recorded every note. Saved every photo. Downloaded the memos. I bought an external drive the next day and tucked it into the back of my tool chest in the garage, the one drawer she never opens because she's afraid of spiders. And then I waited. Because now I didn't want answers. I had them. I wanted evidence. Not for revenge. Not for court. For me. So when she inevitably tried to gaslight me, when the day came that she tilted her head and said, "You're imagining things," I'd have everything. I'd have proof that I hadn't imagined the last year of my slow, invisible erasure. And still, I kissed her on the cheek that night. Still, I washed her coffee cup the next morning. Still, I listened as she called her co-worker from the living room while I folded laundry. Because now, I wasn't the one being fooled. Now, I was watching the end of our marriage in real time and recording every frame of it. She forgot the date. Or maybe she didn't forget, maybe she ignored it. It was our 10th wedding anniversary. 10 years. A full decade since we stood in a vineyard in Oregon and said we'd never lie, never hide, never walk away. I remember how her hands trembled when she held mine back then. Not because she was afraid, but because she was overwhelmed by how much she believed in what we were starting. Now, 10 years later, she was out of the house before noon. No mention of the day. No card. No text. Not even a fake excuse. I had spent the morning making her favorite breakfast: sourdough toast, sliced avocado, poached eggs with smoked paprika. I even set the table, cloth napkins and all. I waited. Her car was gone. She hadn't left a note. By 10, the eggs were cold. By 11, the toast was stiff. By noon, I threw everything in the trash. It would have hurt more if I hadn't already seen what was coming. The night before, she'd been on the phone, the real phone this time, sitting just outside on the patio, wrapped in a blanket, wine glass on the table. She whispered into the receiver, laughed once, then said something that made my fingers clench involuntarily. No, he won't say anything. He never does. That's the beauty of it. She was right. I hadn't said anything. Not once. Not when I saw the texts. Not when I found the second phone. Not when I stood outside room 214 watching another man walk into the life I thought was mine. I didn't say a word. And I knew why now. Because saying something would have made it real. Saying something would have made me the one who destroyed the illusion. And if I destroyed it, I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd come back to herself. But that morning, as I scraped avocado off a porcelain plate with shaking hands, I realized something. There was no coming back. There was no version of this where I forgave, and we rebuilt. She wasn't in the marriage anymore. I was. She was already somewhere else. So instead of sitting in silence all day, I left the house. I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't leave a note. I turned off my phone and drove. No destination in mind. Just the need to move. The car felt alien. Like a vessel I was steering out of habit, not purpose. At some point, I found myself pulling off the highway onto an overlook we once visited years ago. Back when we used to take photos of sunsets and laugh about silly future baby names. She wanted to name a girl Indigo. I had laughed then, not because it was silly, but because I could see her being the kind of mother who could raise a daughter with a name like that. Now I sat on the same bench, staring at the horizon, And all I could think was how cruel it was that I still remembered her favorite hypothetical name, while she couldn't remember our real-life wedding anniversary. There was another couple nearby. Young, maybe mid-20s. They were arguing. Nothing serious, just small tension wrapped in sarcasm. But they cared. You could hear it in the way they snapped at each other. There was still heat in it. And for the first time, I felt jealous of a fight. Because at least they still had something to fight for. I didn't cry. I just disconnected. Something inside me folded in half, like a worn piece of paper. I sat on that bench until the sun dipped behind the trees. Then I drove back. She was already home, curled up on the couch, watching a show I didn't recognize. No makeup. Hair tied up. She looked at me and smiled. "Hey, there you are," she said. "I thought you were working late." I looked at her, really looked, and I saw it clearly for the first time. She had rehearsed this life. These little lines. These soft distractions. She'd been perfecting the art of casual cruelty. But I didn't call her out. I nodded and said, "Yeah, long day." Then I went to the kitchen, washed my hands, and opened the drawer under the stove. Inside was the envelope. It had been sitting there for weeks. Inside were divorce papers I'd printed and signed. Just in case. I closed the drawer without touching them. Because I still wasn't ready. Not yet. But soon. The first thing I took was the photo from our hallway. Not the one from the wedding, that would have been obvious. No, I started with the trip to the lake. The photo where she was in a red flannel, standing on a dock with my arm around her waist. I remember the day clearly. We'd rented a cabin for her birthday. She spent the whole weekend telling me it was the first time in years she'd felt like herself. Now, I looked at that picture and saw something I hadn't before. She wasn't leaning into me. She was leaning away. I slid the frame out of its spot and placed it gently between two old blankets in a box I'd labeled winter stuff and left it in the garage. She never went out there. Too cold. Too dusty. That's where everything started to go piece by piece, day by day. My personal photos. My favorite coffee mug. A sweater her mother gave me that I'd never worn but felt obligated to keep hanging by the door. Gone. Hidden. Packed. She never noticed. And that, more than anything, confirmed what I already knew. She'd stopped looking. At me. At the house. At the life we used to be proud of. I watched her float through the days like nothing had changed. Like we weren't living parallel stories under the same roof. She'd hum in the kitchen. Scroll endlessly on her phone. She even started asking me to pick up her dry cleaning again. Like we were still pretending the strings weren't already cut. One night she left for a late team meeting, and I took the opportunity to open her desk drawer. Not to snoop. Not for proof. I already had proof. I was past the point of needing confirmation. I was looking for answers. Instead, I found a greeting card. It was unopened. To Clint, in her handwriting. I slid the envelope out and held it for a moment, debating whether I was ready to read something that wasn't meant for me. The card was soft blue, with gold trim. Simple. Elegant. I opened it. Inside was a single sentence, handwritten with care. "I've never felt more like me than when I'm not with him." No punctuation. Just that. I put it back exactly the way I found it. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't hurt, even. What I felt, and I remember this clearly, was relief. Because finally, she had said it plainly. Not in code. Not in whispers. Not between the lines. She had outgrown me. And now, for the first time, I felt the freedom to do something I hadn't allowed myself to consider before, plan my exit. Not with noise. Not with drama. With silence. Because if she wanted a life without me, I was going to give her exactly that, with the precision and patience she never expected from me. So I started shifting things more aggressively. Canceled my gym membership. Not hers, just mine. Deleted joint subscriptions. Removed my name from the electric bill. I started carrying my passport with me, quietly transferring small amounts of cash into a separate account she didn't know existed. The kind of slow unraveling you can't track until it's already complete. And still, I made dinner. I washed her laundry. I left notes on the fridge like nothing had changed. Because the longer she thought I was still asleep in this life, the easier it became to walk backward out the door without making a sound. She was too busy with her Thursday night man to notice that the walls of our home were beginning to thin. She didn't see the framed art missing from my office. Didn't notice her cat's vaccination papers missing from the drawer. Didn't question why I'd moved all our documents from the fire safe for scanning. She didn't notice because she was already gone. The only difference was, I was finally following. But I needed one last thing before I left, a truth she couldn't rewrite later. A final piece of evidence to seal the timeline, to make sure, when she told the story after I was gone, she wouldn't be able to frame me as the one who gave up. So, one evening, I set a trap. Not out of malice. Out of necessity. Because she'd forgotten who I really was. And she was about to be reminded. She thought I was still asleep. That morning, crisp, silent, a Wednesday, she moved around the house like always. Light footsteps, soft hums, slippers gliding across the floor like nothing in her world had changed. But everything had. Because the night before, I finally gave up hoping she'd ever notice me slipping away. She had gone out, another networking dinner, and I had waited until she left to print one final letter. Not a confrontation. A farewell. Not to Eleanor, but to myself. To the man who waited, who begged in silence, who folded into himself to stay small enough for a love that had long stopped making room for him. I placed the letter in her favorite coffee mug. She wouldn't read it until hours later, maybe even the next day. That was fine. I didn't need her to respond. I wasn't coming back. I had packed everything important into 2 duffel bags. The documents. The old memories I could still cherish. A few clothes. Nothing that smelled like her. She was in the bathroom when I walked out the door. I didn't say goodbye. I drove east, out past the county line where the trees open up and the radio goes fuzzy. I didn't check my phone. I didn't look in the mirror. I drove to a small cabin I'd quietly rented under a different name. It was nothing fancy, a 1-bedroom tucked in the woods by a lake we'd never visited together. That was important to me. I wanted something untainted. A place that hadn't been poisoned by her absence. And then I sat. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I breathed. For the first time in months, maybe years, I breathed without feeling like I owed someone an apology just for existing. I spent that first week doing absolutely nothing. I watched birds. I read books. I cooked badly and laughed at myself. I slept with the windows open and no longer listened for a car in the driveway. There was no driveway. No her to wait for. And eventually, the silence stopped being punishment. It became peace. Weeks later, I got a message from a mutual friend. Just a single sentence. She's looking for you. I didn't respond. What was there to say? She could rewrite the story however she wanted now. Say I was weak. Say I gave up. Say I never said anything. And maybe all of that was true. But I left with my truth intact. And I left it in that mug, in that letter, the last words I ever gave her. You didn't break me. You just reminded me I still had a choice. So I made it. Not to fight, not to punish. Just to live. Away from you. Months have passed now. And I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm learning how to like my own company again. I'm meeting new people, slow, careful steps. I talk more. I laugh louder. I tell stories about a man I used to be and a version of love that once felt like home. I don't hate her. I don't miss her. I don't need her to explain anything anymore. Because I've started something new, not with someone else, but with myself. And that's the real ending. The one where I chose me.